As I've mentioned, Happy Wheels became publicly available on June 4th of 2010. The game became open for users to access it on TotalJerkface.com. They could play all of the levels that were available at that time, and they could upload their own levels. For the purposes of this retrospective series, I'm considering June 4th as the game's release date. Now, there are some levels dated before June of 2010. These are all levels by the game's creator, Jim Bonacci. He created them alongside the game's development tools, and built them into Happy Wheels before he published the completed game. Clearly, most of these aren't intended as proper levels. Most of them have no goal. Jim probably used these to test the mechanics of the moving objects in the game, and he figured that it would be cool to share them with us in the end. It's fun to go back into these old levels and use newer characters that weren't available when the levels first released. I can mess around with the physics of these objects in funny ways that Jim did not intend at the time. The last of these early levels is Obstacle Course. Question mark? This is the most conventional level of the group. It's a game foremost. It doesn't give the impression of being a physics simulator. It's a sequence of common obstacles that you may see in Happy Wheels levels, and there's a goal at the end. Very simple and straightforward. And it's made for a very intense competition on the Happy Wheels speedrunning scene. When Happy Wheels first released, these few levels by Jim were the only ones available to play. It was a very quiet launch. The first user-made level didn't even appear on the platform until 4 days later, on June 8th. The earliest user-made level that I was able to find in the level browser is My Obby by the user Maximum. However, I haven't actually been able to play it. When I click on the Play Now button, I'm able to get as far as the character selection window, but once I choose a character, the game freezes on a blue screen. The same screen appears if I try to load up a replay. All of the user-made levels on the first page are like this. Of the 49 Happy Wheels levels that show up on the first page of the level browser, I've only been able to play those levels by Jim Bonacci. I don't know why this phenomenon has occurred. I haven't encountered this blue screen when trying to play any other levels. It only seems to affect the first few user-made levels from June of 2010. What makes it even weirder is that this error has no effect on Jim Bonacci's early levels. They play just fine. I don't know why the blue screen error would affect all of these other users, but specifically single out Jim. The earliest user-made level that I was able to play is Ski Jump of Doom by Woot2134, published on June 17th. Yeah, there's not much to say about this one. I just accelerate very quickly and smash myself into the edge of the universe. The creator probably got this idea from Jim's level Crash Test. As derivative as it is, this is a piece of Happy Wheels history. Past this point, all of the levels that I've tried have worked. I'm going to quickly sample a few of them. Here's a level called Spike Ramp, also from the 17th. Yeah, it's the same crap. Accelerate, crash, next. The next one is Fast. Let's see if this is any good. Well, it didn't lie. That certainly was fast. Early Happy Wheels creators really liked their crash simulations. Those were 3 different users who essentially made the same level on the same day. Let's see one more. Mount Deathmore by Minorcos. This ought to be good. The description is really hyping it up. Well, it's original. I'll give it that much. There did not exist a substantial community of level creators when the game first released in June of 2010. Happy Wheels was quite obscure at first, and it steadily gained traction over the course of 2 years. The game's popularity hit a peak in 2012. With only a few active creators, Happy Wheels was in a dearth for content in the first few weeks. Furthering this scarcity, most creators didn't have the first idea as to what they should make. They had to learn how to use the tools of the level editor if they intended to make anything more complex than an arrangement of blue rectangles. And users didn't have a lot of examples off of which they could work. Jim supplied a few sample levels, but they aren't very helpful towards the goal of developing a full level with a goal at the end. Most of these have one gimmick, and that's it. They aren't very useful foundations off of which one could make a more complex playing experience. Still, enough users found these sample levels to be helpful examples. A lot of them started by trying to recreate a level that Jim had previously published. That's a decent start. That's a fine way to get one's foot into a new game development tool, especially if you have no prior experience in game design. As I've mentioned, several users made copies and slight variations of Jim's level Crash Test. That's the style of level that I've encountered the most in the first few pages of levels, and that style of design has really fallen off of the map since 2010. I rarely see new Crash Test levels when I scroll through the level browser in 2020. And that makes sense. You can only make the exact same level so many times. Those users have evolved past the Crash Test and have gone on to make better levels with more complex gameplay. I think that so many users fixated on this Crash Test model because those levels are very easy to make. You can make one with just fixed shapes and boost panes. Most of Jim's other levels utilize motors, which require a little bit more knowledge of the tools of the level editor. Within a few months, users became more comfortable with the available tools, and they started making more complex levels and more different types of levels. Distinct genres of Happy Wheels levels started to emerge. As I see it, there are about 13 staple genres of Happy Wheels. These are genres that emerged somewhat early in the game's history, and that are still prevalent today. These genres still receive many hundreds of derivative levels per week, all of the way up to and throughout 2020. These staple genres include the obstacle course, sword throw, ball throw, bottle run, rope swing, pogo jump, trivia, glass break, jet run, spike fall, and arrow run, and escape the box, and don't move. The obstacle course is the most prevalent genre, and the one that's easiest to explain. It's what you would expect from the name. You have a character, and your goal is to get to the end of the level without dying. You may encounter many different types of obstacles that impede you on your way. They may be spikes, or mines, or wrecking balls, or moving shapes. Or they may just be difficult jumps. All of this is subject to the creator's artistic vision. There is a lot of room for innovation in this genre. In fact, I think that most winnable Happy Wheels levels fit into this genre, one way or another. The definition is very broad. There are subgenres under the umbrella of the obstacle course. For example, consider the BMX park. In these levels, the playable character is Irresponsible Dad. The obstacles consist mostly of ramps and jumps. BMX levels often employ boost panes before a large pipe or loop. The sword throw is another very popular style of Happy Wheels level. Here are a few common elements that are typical to the sword throw. The playable character starts in a standing position, usually with fixed shapes on both sides to keep him restrained upright. Segway Guy is the most commonly used character to these ends, because his default position is standing. In most sword throws, there is no vehicle. You wouldn't have any use for it, and it would just get in the way. As Segway Guy is standing here, there are one or more swords positioned behind him at rest. He can reach back with his arms and grab them. He takes these swords and throws them at various non-player characters at different positions in space. The targets are usually in front of the player, but they may also appear behind him if the level creator wants the sword throw to be especially challenging. The earliest sword throw level that I was able to find is from March of 2011. It is by the user Adrenaline19. This level actually predates the sword item in the Happy Wheels level editor. Jim's team didn't make blade weapons available until the version 1.5 update in November of 2011. So this user constructed a unique sword asset out of polygons. Polygon swords are a very interesting piece of Happy Wheels history. They appeared in just a few levels in those few months between March and November. Newer sword throws invariably use the level editor's native blade weapons. Mechanically, that makes sense. Actual swords are easier to handle, and they actually damage the targets on impact. But still, these early sword throws have a certain charm that's lost on most newer levels. This is Sword Throwing by PS2 Matthew. It's the second oldest sword throw that I could find. Look at this. He made a whole scene around it. The polygon sword bounces in a peculiar way when it hits the ground. He added those red circles for a simulated blood effect. That's funny, I like that. Newer sword throws usually include multiple swords, with the expectation that the player will throw them in multiple different directions. There are multiple targets, which are usually non-player characters. It's common to give each target a name and a short epithet. There are a few stock characters that recur over and over in these levels. Wheelchair Guy is a hobo. Moped Lady is your ex-wife. By far, the most common character in these sword throws is Justin Bieber. We represent him with Irresponsible Son, and he always stands directly in front of the player, where he's easy to hit. We really liked making fun of Justin Bieber by saying that he's a little kid and that we want to throw a sword at him. That was a very topical joke in 2011, and we're still making the same stupid jokes 9 years later. I'm aware that this is all extremely stupid, repetitive, lowbrow humor. As much as our levels have evolved in their complexity, the Happy Wheels community's sense of humor has not changed at all. And that's how it has to be. It wouldn't be Happy Wheels otherwise. The whole player base shares one brain cell. It's beautiful. I'm noticing some striking parallels between 14-year-old Gen Z humor and what we now call boomer humor. Hell yeah, I'm going to vibe check my nagging ex-wife. Horseshoe theory confirmed. Most sword throws don't have a win condition. It's up to the players to decide when they've had enough. And a victory screen isn't really necessary. Most sword throw playthroughs end in one of three ways. You kill everyone, you run out of swords, or you accidentally kill yourself. Some level creators have devised their own win conditions. An easy way to do this is to have a trigger that activates the win condition when a moving shape passes through it. The creator may place this trigger directly next to one target in particular, usually the one that's most difficult to hit. Some designs are straight bespoke. This one keeps a running checklist of every target that I've neutralized. I win when I activate each of those several triggers, presumably by eliminating their associated targets. It's good to have a win condition, but it often doesn't work correctly in my experience. Sometimes, a sword will graze the trigger space without actually knocking down the target. Apart from murdering random onlookers, there isn't much to the mechanics of these levels. You just throw swords. It's pretty straightforward. Some levels have minor bonus conditions. If you hit a certain trigger, it may cause more swords to fall into place behind you. When I first started playing Happy Wheels, I did not like sword throw levels. I thought that they were mechanically broken. For a beginner, throwing swords is not easy. The simple fact is that the characters in this game are not designed to throw swords. This is a ragdoll physics game, and the development focused much more on the physics of the vehicles than on the mechanics of the player character's arm movement. Segway Guy's arm movement is very rudimentary. It's the bare minimum necessary for him to drag himself across the floor when he falls off of his Segway. These arms are not meant for complex tasks, such as the proper handling of a sword. Within the original design vision of Happy Wheels, there's no reason why the existence of a sword throw must be possible. It's simply a coincidence of the game's physics that the character has enough strength to lift a light object and swing it forward, and that the object continues moving independently of the thrower if he releases it at a specific time. Jimbonacci did not design Segway Guy with such an action in mind. Because the character's movement is so limited, it can be difficult to precisely throw a sword at a specific target. To impart sufficient energy to the sword, I basically have to swing my arms as quickly as possible, and that makes for a very short window of time in which I can release the sword at a given angle. Sometimes the sword's mid-air rotation throws off its trajectory. Sometimes my attempted throw completely flops for other reasons. Maybe I grabbed the hilt at a position slightly higher than usual, and it bumps against my wrist as I'm throwing it. I looked at all of these factors, these perceived flaws, and I decided that sword throws are kinda asinine. They relied more on arbitrary occurrences and unintended outcomes of the game's logic, and less on skill and planning. To me, sword throwing didn't appear to be a well-refined skill that I could learn and consistently reproduce. It seemed to be too random. Sword throwing definitely takes practice. I've played a lot of sword throws recently, and I've gotten a lot better. Now I'm sufficiently precise with most of my throws, and I can appreciate these levels better. Still, there's a major problem in the mechanics of a sword throw, which most level creators have not addressed. In most cases, you don't have to actually kill a target to remove it from the game. In the archetypical design of a sword throw, each target stands on a small platform. The level creator sets each target's status to sleeping. That means that the character will stay in its precise position and conformation until an outside force acts upon it. The slightest contact from a moving object can rouse a character from its sleep, and once the target starts moving, it has no way to balance itself. In most cases, it flops right off of the platform. I don't have to kill them or impart any type of damage unto them. The blunt hilt of a sword or a stray limb from another character can knock out the target. Sometimes one target will knock over multiple others as it's falling, in a sort of domino effect. I think that this effect makes some sword throws too easy, and cheapens the experience. If you're going to say that you've beaten a sword throw, you should really have to kill each target for real. I think that I found an elegant solution to this problem. In my level Celebrity Sword Throw, I attached a pin joint to each target's body. This joint anchors the character to a specific point in space, and it only releases if the character dies. So none of the characters are going to fall out of the game because of a non-fatal flesh wound, or because someone bumped into them. Because I mitigated the factor of characters knocking each other over, I could also fit a lot of different characters into one screen. The ball throw is similar to a sword throw. I have a reservoir of balls behind my head. Some users utilize the football item in the level editor, but most use regular circle shapes. It doesn't make much difference either way. I chose to use human heads in my level. They include the advantage that I can make them explode by applying an impulse. The goal of a ball throw is to get the ball into a specific basket. There are plenty of other baskets that cause other crazy effects. There's usually at least one outcome that kills the player in a creative way. There may be a way to get more balls. The help trigger places a barrier over some of the baskets so that the balls don't fall in there and they're more likely to roll into the win basket. In some levels, the win basket is locked at first. In that case, I have to activate a different trigger first to unlock the goal. There may be moving shapes that change the course of a ball's movement and divert it away from the goal. I like ball throws. Even when they don't include gratuitous violence, I tend to prefer them over sword throws. And that's saying a lot. Why does any pony play Happy Wheels if not for the gratuitous violence? But seriously, ball throws allow for a lot of creative level design. The mechanics are more complex than simply knocking over some enemies. I see that this is turning out to be a long video, and I still have a lot of material that I want to cover. I will continue my discussions of the common genres of Happy Wheels levels in the next part of this retrospective. Thank you for watching.